This is Rambo First Blood Part 2, the Mega cartridge for the Sega Master System. Now the Mega refers to the size of the cartridge, but don't get too excited, Mega in this case is megabit, or about 120K. Loosely based on the movie from around the same time, Rambo is a top-view run-and-gun in the style of Commando. Now, Commando was released a year before in the arcades, but as you'll soon see, this game adds a few twists of its own, such as being able to go after highway patrolmen. Seriously, what did those guys ever do to you, besides all the speeding tickets? Booting it up, Rambo starts with a fairly lush title screen. Let's hit one-player start to do a one-player game, but the game also does support two-player simultaneous play, which we'll see later on. Now, this game was released in 1986, the same year the Master System debuted in North America. Now, I can't say whether this was a launch game or not, but it must have been pretty close. And I believe was the first run-and-gun on the system. Now, what you want to do in Rambo, aside from blowing away the bad guys, is rescue the hostages, and you do that by firing a grenade-tipped arrow at one of the camps, and then the hostage comes out and he kind of boogies away. Seriously, this is like the happiest hostage ever. And when you rescue them, they toss you a power-up, and that can be more arrows, more powerful arrows, or even a smart bomb, unless there's already a power-up item on that screen, and in that case, they don't do anything. Now, you'd think with that kind of weaponry, they'd be able to escape themselves, but I guess not. You can also power up your rifle so that it shoots farther and goes through multiple targets. Now, you may have noticed that the movement speed in Rambo is actually quite slow, and no, you cannot speed that up. But you know that's fine because the pace of the game is slow and strategic. The game throws all kinds of configurations of enemies at you, and it's about maneuvering smartly, not maneuvering quickly. In fact, the overall pace of the game reminds me a lot of Gain Ground. Rambo also lets you strafe if you move backwards while firing. So yeah, the whole thing actually comes together in a smart, well-planned way. In fact, there's only one area where Rambo is really lacking, and that is that each level isn't really all that different from one another. Especially the first 4 levels, which all take place in a similar environment. Which isn't to say that Rambo doesn't have variety, because it does, in the form of many different enemy types, configurations of enemies, and environmental hazards. And there are enemies that appear on some levels but not others, such as the knife throwers or the tanks. So overall it has about 10 different types of enemies to face, and their patterns and abilities are all pretty different from each other, so there's a decent amount of variation. Certainly not less variety than some of its contemporaries, such as Ikari Warriors. And after each level, of course, you fight a boss, and this is in the form of a base a la Commando. Basically, you survive until it throws you some grenade-tipped arrows, you take the arrows and blow up the wall, then walk off to safety. Between each level, you get one of a few different pictures of Rambo and an extra life. The game is 6 levels long and about 20 minutes in total, and you might be thinking that's kind of short, but for a game this grueling, I think it's about right. And for the amount of elements in the game, it's also about right, because the game already drags just a little bit as is. Compared to, again, Ikari Warriors, it's about the same length. And yes, I did say grueling. The game is short, but it's very hard, and in fact, one reviewer on YouTube said that he only got a couple screens into the whole game, ever. Now, I had a similar experience at first. I thought, wow, this game is impossible, but it's really just in how you approach it and how you deal with the enemy patterns and so forth. As I mentioned before, it does play a little bit differently than your typical run and gun. which I appreciate because it gives Rambo a reason to exist in my collection. You know, I already have copies of Commando and Heavy Barrel, and that's why I think it's great that Rambo has its own style and its own identity. Yeah, so Rambo is more than just another Me Too game. And truth be told, as I get older, I appreciate stuff like this that's a little bit less twitchy, a little bit slower paced. It also has a really fun two-player mode, which incidentally lets you continue as well. You can't continue in single-player mode. And I've got to mention that even with all kinds of chaos on the screen, the game never really slows down or flickers a lot. Graphics are bright and colorful, well drawn, and the music's pretty good too. I believe the music is a rendition of Jerry Goldsmith's Rambo music, because he's credited in the intro. So is Rambo a timeless classic? No, not really, but if you have a Master System, you might really consider picking this up. It's not a very expensive game, it's fairly common. I believe it goes for about $10 complete and probably a lot less cartridge only. If you're in Europe or other territories, I think the game came out as Secret Command, but aside from not having the Rambo license, pretty much everything else is the same, including the character art and music.